This is the 20th season of Bass Talk Live. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Strike King Lures, AFTCO, Pro Guide Batteries, Spro, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, Beatdown Outdoors, and Sunline.
BTL coming at you.
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk bass fishing. Got a good show for today. It's a recorded show. I'm currently in Scotland. I think today I'm actually supposed to be at Loch Ness. Yes, the Loch Ness. It's like kind of a little birthday deal, 9 days in Scotland. And when I found out I was going over there, I was like, well, there's no way I can go over to Scotland and not fish in Loch Ness. And I know that that's a touristy location, but also if you listen to the shows with Matt Steffen and Miles Berghoff and Polinick, you know that I have a liking to that type of thing. So I will have my eye out, but we're spending a half day on the water. I think they have like pike, some sort of salmon. I have absolutely no idea what's going on, but a half day on Loch Ness. Someone who probably could catch the Loch Ness Monster, like I would give him a 50-50 chance based on the year that he just had on the MLF Tackle Warehouse Invitationals. Like if it's in the water and it's large, he's most likely going to find it, target it, and catch it because he did that all year. Like it didn't matter whether you like took 2 pounds away from him in a tournament or anything that happened. Like the dude battled it out with Jake Lawrence for the entire year. It came down to the final invitational last week on Lake St. Clair, big fishery, and Alec Morrison, he almost clean swept. He finished, I think, second in that tournament, but then he won the Rookie of the Year and the Angler of the Year. He got all sorts of like four-wheelers or side-by-sides and stuff, 50K, an invite to the Bass Pro Tour. And he's like, I think he's buddies with my buddy Rick Harrison for the last year and a half. Rick has been like, dude, you got to get my boy Alec on. And that's how Rick talks. So we got Alec on. He's, I think, supposed to be driving. It's like 6, 7 in the morning where he is. Thanks for jumping on BTL, dude.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
You do room with Rick, right?
Yeah, we room together as well as Brett Carnwright for all the invitationals this year.
Oh,
it was a good crew.
Yeah, that's a house. Rick is quite possibly the most positive individual that I've ever been around. I've known him for a long time, dating back to the Kurt Dove Pro Bass Camp, the early days there on Lake Amistad. But like, you want to talk about a dude who like genuinely cheers for his buddies. Like he was like out on the water watching you throughout the year too, if he had missed a cut, and he had a good season too. He's becoming a hell of an angler in quite his own right. But I mean, that dude is positive 24/7.
Yeah, no doubt. I don't think there's anybody that meets Rick that doesn't enjoy him.
It's so weird. Like I remember meeting him for the first time, and he's got that like wolf on his knee, and then the newfound glory tattoo, and like everything. Yeah. And you get to know him, and you're like, and then you realize this dude is just a genuinely good human being, like a great person to be around.
No doubt, fun to be around on the water, off the water. It doesn't matter.
Well, let's get things kicked off in the start. So the invitationals this year send 5 anglers to the BPT. There's a picture out here. I'll show this picture right here because it is like the changing of the guard when it comes to angling. There they are right there. We'll have Colby Miller on later this week. I actually know him a little bit, but it's unbelievable with Jake Lawrence, Jaden Parrish, and Marshall Hughes there in that list. Definitely a changing of the guard, and it seemed like you guys were just on a different level this year when it came to competition. Did you feel that? Did you notice that something special was happening this year on the invitationals between a select group of guys that were just getting it done week after week after week?
Yeah, I mean, quite literally, you could not slip up a single day because if you did, you were getting passed right up by these guys. It was unreal. It was unlike anything I've ever seen. And also, it's like there was a lot of camaraderie between all of us too. You know, we all became pretty good friends, which I know sometimes like might not happen when you're in stiff competition against one another. But yeah, just a great group of guys who can all catch fish literally anywhere they go.
Fishing for the past 50 years has been about experience
Hmm.
and time on the water and making connections. And who's the oldest out of that group? Is he like 20? Are you the oldest out of that group at 25?
No, I think I'd probably say Marshall is. I think he's
He's
the
not
oldest
30
by.
though.
No, I don't believe so.
How in your mind does that happen on a bunch of guys who I think the top 5 average a combined like 1.8 years of professional experience? You're in your rookie season, you captured the
Hmm.
rookie of the year and the angler of the year. How is it that guys can come in at that level against 140 other guys who all have more experience than you and dominate so thoroughly?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, obviously, each one of those guys, you know, has a we all have you know, previous background, I guess. And
Mhm.
you know, we were all definitely very much into tournament fishing prior to this season and had a lot of success in different parts of the country. Um, but yeah, it's been unreal to see like how quick all of these guys can put it together on a body of water in 3 days and then you know, not miss really, not miss for a single day.
Yeah, so there was one day that was canceled on Champlain, the final day, correct? Which had to
Yeah,
bum you out because that's like your baby, right? Like that was the one that you probably wanted, and you ended up still cashing a $20,000 check there. But just to put this into context, we're going to talk about Rayburn, West Point, Kentucky Lake, Eufaula, Champlain, and the Detroit River. And I just want to read off your daily weights in the days that you competed.
sounds good.
1810, 1810, 25-9, 13-13. 14-10, 12-4, 12-12. That was West Point. That was an absolute grinder in early March on West Point.
It was.
20 pounds, 7 ounces, 22, 18, 9, 15, 15, 16, 8, 13, 12, 19, 14, and 26, 22, 14, 23, 6, and 28. What was the most stressful day out of all of those? Because you cracked them every single day, Alec.
Man, I would say this final day on Detroit was probably the most stressful. You know, I rolled into quite literally what I thought was the winning area on the final day. And, you know, over the course of day one and day two, um, between practice and then day one and day two, I was seeing that, you know, the percentage of fish that I was getting to actually bite was steadily going down. Uh, you know, in practice, I was probably catching easily 80 to 90% of them that I would see. And then day one, it was down to about 60% of them. Day two was about 40%. And day three was probably, I only got like probably 10% of them that I saw to bite. And it was extremely painful and nerve wracking. You know, it was like the one day that you just want it all to come together and work out. But, you know, they made me work for it for sure. And I was able to still catch, you know, like 20 pounds, 6 ounces or 8 ounces, whatever it was, and wrap up the event. But yeah, that was by far the most stressful day. I threw on probably 4 limits of like 22 plus pound class fish, and you know, they just wouldn't really react too well to what I was throwing at them. So that was definitely the most stressful day, but I'm glad it all worked out in the end.
I feel like it's weird how in fishing, like the fishing gods always make you always like throw a little hitch in the giddy up at the end. Like they're like,
Always.
oh, you think this is gonna be easy? Ah,
Yeah.
lockjaw, or
Yeah.
boat issues, or weather, or
Or
someone else.
yeah, or a storm day one. Like
Yeah, there
we always
always
have
seems
some
to be
crazy
something.
conditions.
It's
Always.
wild. All right, I want to get into this for those who are like, well, how does this kid come out of nowhere? you really haven't. You've really been around for a long time.
Mhm.
If you look at it,
Yeah.
you fished as a co-angler in the Toyota series, dating back to the time when you were a teenager. You made the
Yep.
jump pretty much 4 years ago. But talk about that time from like 2015 to kind of 2019, fishing out of the back of the boat. Your style. Were you a I don't want to use that term because that's what everyone called Polinick, but were you a prodigy back then, or was there a moment where there was kind of like the switch flip to where you understood something that no one else understands? Like, how does that progression work to where we are today?
Yeah, I definitely even back then, I spent a ton of time on the water on my own, and literally every day after school. My mom would drop me off before I could drive and tow a boat. My mom would quite literally pick me up from school and drop me off at the lake and dump the boat in. And I wouldn't do any homework. I would just focus on catching some bass until dark. And then a lot of times I would like graph on Lake Champlain throughout the night until like 3 or 4 a.m. and then get off and head home and go to school the next morning. So despite probably not many people really knowing my background and co-angler days and everything, like I definitely have spent a lot of time on the water prior to jumping into these events as a boater. But yeah, throughout those first few years, I really hit the co-angling scene hard. I fished a lot of stuff local. Champlain is such an awesome place because regardless of the winter, during the summer, it's extremely packed with events. And I was able to get into ABAs and BFLs. And at the time, they were like the Rayovac and Everstart and
Yeah.
Costa Series. And yeah, that's really where I got my start. And it was, I was like 16 years old in 2 weeks, and I was old enough to uh, enter my first. Believe it was the Rayovac
Okay.
as a co-angler, and I finished second. I almost won it, and that was like the first kind of turning point for me. And after that, I really went hard and fished a bunch of opens as a co-angler throughout the north and a few down south, like Harris Chain and James River and all that good stuff. But yeah, it's definitely been this has all been in progress since I was about 11 years old. It's really all I've wanted to do, and it's all I've pushed for. I haven't had any other hobbies, like I didn't hang out with friends after school and play video games or anything. I just fished. That was it.
Really good article over on Major League Fishing about your Angler of the Year win. There's a couple portions of it that stuck out to me, and you kind of mentioned that. Uh, you said, I grew up essentially learning that the dude who put in the most work behind the console was typically the guy who did the best. It's taken thousands and thousands of hours to graph all of Lake Champlain, which is 300,000 acres, by the way. But I learned so much valuable information about fish and why they get the places that they do. So to me, Alec, this does not sound like a guy who just turned on a live scope and started
Hmm.
looking for fish. Like, this is a deep understanding
Hmm.
behind the technology that you're using in coordination with it, not that you're relying exclusively on it. I think that's a integral part to really kind of dissect here.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I grew up on Champlain, which I know you were just there for
Yeah,
the
I
Bass
can't
Nation
even
event.
imagine being like, just to have the mindset of like, I want to graph all of this. Like, I was there for 4 days and I saw maybe a tenth of the inland sea, and that's
Hmm.
it. And like,
Yeah.
I would drive and be like, my God, there's fish in all this stuff.
Yep.
It's mind boggling. But I mean, anywhere that you can basically put a boat on Champlain, you've been there.
Yeah, exactly. And it's pretty crazy to think, but like pre scope and all that, like I mentioned, it was the dudes who did the best, like Ryan Lattenville and Brett Carnwright and those dudes. Like I learned really quick that the reason that they were so successful was because they just had more like isolated targets than everybody else, and that was like essentially like the best way to fish on Champlain, like pre-scope, was to pretty much just run as many like isolated boulders as you could around the inland sea or New York side, and drop on them, drop a drop shot on them on 2D, and I mean it's crazy. I mean we used to catch like I don't know 80 to 100 fish a day doing that on 2D, and it was like you'd see two dots on it sitting above a rock, and your drop shot like would never hit bottom. It would just be bit pretty much instantly, like mid column,
Good
and
Lord.
so that all that craft work really was the foundation for me of really starting to learn like why certain places get good, and the kind of irregularities that all these smallmouth enjoy to be around, and I really learned a lot, and Champlain was an amazing place to grow up on. If I didn't have that lake in my backyard, then who knows where I would be.
Okay, so that's great on Champlain. That's like smallmouth and northern straight
Hmm.
largemouth that bite. But like you won on Rayburn by 24 pounds. You catch them all around the entire country. Is Does that just translate to other fisheries? Like you obviously can't go to like a West Point and get 500 isolated targets because you have a limited amount of practice there. Like
Yeah.
how have you taken that and then translated it to grass fisheries, highland fisheries, spotted bass fisheries,
Hmm.
largemouth fisheries from Florida to Texas to the Ozarks to all over the place?
Yeah. Like Rayburn and West Point really was um, originally when I won on Rayburn, it was kind of an isolated target deal. I was fishing brush piles, and I was doing the same thing on West Point as well. Um, in both of these places, I went pre-practice for, and quite literally just graphed. I think I caught in pre-practice. I think I caught one bass on West Point in like 4 days, and I really just spent my entire time behind the console, and I found a bunch of isolated piles, on points and all this stuff in these couple major creeks. And West Point was a cool one because, it was after that pre-practice section, I was really like, man, I think this one section of lake is probably the best. It had like the cleanest water. It's like kind of mid-lake. It was like protected and just had like all the habitat and bait that they needed. And really, I came back for the tournament, and within 2 hours, like I had like 12 and a half, 13 pounds fishing these piles that I already marked in what I thought was the best area of the lake. And I was like, well, this is probably the deal. Like, I'm just going to do this the whole time. But, but yeah, I really did try to pre-practice most of these places. And, the ones that didn't really pre-practice, I didn't really establish anything was, I would say Kentucky. I was the most nervous for Kentucky Lake out of any of the other events on the schedule. I went there in November after the Toyota Series Championship on Table Rock, and I stopped there on the way home from that event. And then I tried to scope around. I tried to do some graphing. I knew that it was probably going to be that spawning smallmouth deal on stumps. So I started getting out on some of those bars where I actually ended up catching them on in the tournament. But in November, there were so many carp out on those main river
Oh,
bars that I literally graphed for 2 days and probably marked like two stumps. Like I couldn't even see them because of how many carp there were. And
Oh
I
my
was
gosh.
it made me so nervous. I was like, what do you even do here? I had never seen anything like that, on any lake in my life. It was definitely a different feeling on Kentucky, and I just felt so out of the loop. And then, spinning back around to the time that the tournament actually started, or official practice started, on day one. Brett and I were talking a lot, and Rick, and that morning, and it was like all three of us kind of figured it out like really, really quick on our own, and easily within the first 3 hours, I had seen probably 20 beds, and caught a few fish, and then I realized that I could graph a certain way down the river in order to spot the actual beds themselves on stumps on side scan, and a lot of people were looking for them, on the trolling motor with perspective and stuff like that. But um, like 80% of the beds were on like the down current side of the stump. So if I graphed with the wind, south to north or north to south, I would see those beds like basically every pass. And as opposed to if I graphed like east to west or vice versa, then the bed would technically be in the shadow of the stump and I wouldn't see it. So, that was something I learned like pretty quick, and I spent basically the entire practice just marking spawning fish, and I didn't know how big they were going to be. I didn't know if Brett and I were real nervous about catching them, because Champlain, you can easily just catch them, weigh them, and release them and go back. But, you can't do that everywhere. We didn't know if they were going to stay or not. And so it was really cool, because come the tournament, we didn't exactly know what we were on. We just knew we had a bunch of spots to hit. And, um, I just kind of pushed hard and hit as many as I could, and was able to catch them pretty good. But yeah, it's been pretty interesting how some of these events have kind of changed. I really didn't expect it to be like that during pre-practice, and then after about 3 hours on the first day, I'm like texting my dad like, "Wow, I'm gonna do really good in this one."
It's interesting. I mean, you guys make it look so easy when you go out there, but then you kind of dig a little deeper, and there is no shortcut to
Mhm.
long term success. And while it may seem like, this is your rookie season, there you are, rookie of the year and the angler of the year trophy. This is really like a decade in the making.
Yeah, no doubt about that. It's something I've quite literally always pushed for. I've never wanted anything else. And one time a good buddy of mine was like, uh, we finished second in this tournament on Cayuga, and I really thought I was going to win it, and it was just a team tournament. And at this time, I hadn't won a lot of stuff on the boater side, but you know, uh, after the tournament, I was pretty bummed we came in second. I thought we were going to win, and we didn't. And he asked me, he's like, what's your plan B? And I was like, Brian, there is no plan B. Like I'm going all in on this, and this is at a time where I really wasn't making much money at all from fishing, and I was basically just scrapping by, but still fishing every tournament that I could, and that's really been the biggest factor is just like not giving up on it and pushing hard all the time and putting the practice in, and doing absolutely everything I can, everything in my power to do well in each event.
I mean, what is your goal coming in? Rookie of the year, angler of the year, win an event, red crest, the whole 9 yards. I mean, is that what you expected out of yourself coming into this year? Or as the year kind of progressed, were you like, holy cow, there's like a lot on the plate in front of me that I could take advantage of here?
Yeah, that's exactly it. The angler of the year, rookie of the year, it really was not the initial goal. I basically took a look at the schedule, and I saw Rayburn and Champlain on there, And I really thought that given the time, like those were two events that I had a good shot at winning, and that I felt real comfortable at.
Hmm.
Uh, Rayburn because of past experience from last year winning the Toyota, and then of course Champlain Home Lake. But as far as the rest of the schedule, those were the only two events out of the six that I had previously been on. So I was kind of just pushing to do well in those two events, and then kind of just see where I stacked up in the rest. And
You stacked pretty
Kentucky was
well.
really that turning point for me, where I was like, wow, okay, I'm sitting pretty good after the first three events down south. We got one more on Eufaula, and then we head north, and I felt real strongly about how I could place up north. St. Clair I hadn't been to, but I love smallmouth and I love trying to chase them down, and it really did turn into kind of a push for AOI, that's for
Hmm.
sure.
Ninth at Rayburn, 12th at West Point, 4th at Kentucky, 22nd at Eufaula, and 3rd at Champlain. But I mean, you still weren't even leading the angler of the year going into the last one, were you?
Yeah, I wasn't. I was
Yeah,
in
that was Lawrence.
second place for the last like three events. Yeah.
Like, how the heck is that pot? Like, that's just unbelievable. And then you make a cast with 6 fish on the first day, else you to come in with a freaking a 25-cent piece.
Yeah, which it was the biggest bag of the tournament, and
Yeah.
I never have made a mistake like that during an event before, really. Like, never have made. I can't recall any major mistake that I made in an event like that, and it just was like it was kind of a weird deal. I don't even still remember like exactly how I did it, but all I know is I went in to call and I weighed my fish and I never actually called. And in my head, I'm thinking, I already had five and needed to call, but in my head, only two of those fish were fish I wanted to actually keep, and weigh in. And, so this whole time I'm like trying to think about like how I can slide around and get three more big bites, and how I only have, really have two fish that I want to weigh in the well. And next thing I know, I'm on the front deck and I make a cast. And the second I make the cast, I'm like, oh no, I have six in there. I never called
Oh
that one.
no.
And, my camera guy, he's super cool. His name's Greg. I've had him for a few events. He's an awesome dude, super nice. He didn't even realize what I had done, had no clue. And I was just looking at him like, man, I got six in there. I gotta call it in right now. And I sat down, called Kevin up, and he informed me it was a 2 pound penalty, and he said go ahead and call that one fish and keep going, and I got rid of it, and it was a hard like hour. I was like,
Mhm.
I basically I remember saying to Greg, uh, I was like, that's it. I probably just blew angler of the year just like that.
And you still
And
had 23.
yeah, I ended up having 24-14. But yeah, I
Oh
went to
man.
I left that primary area that was pretty slow, and I caught a 6 pounder and a 4 1/4. But the rest of those fish I had were small, and it was 10 o'clock, and it was like just overall felt pretty dead other than getting those two good bites. And I made a run to my secondary area, and I just like unleashed on them. I caught like 7 over 4 in a row. Everything I looked at was over 4 pounds. I threw back a 405 or a 408, two 4 1/4s, and a 440. And I just was like absolutely mad at them. But I knew that, my initial kind of goal weight for the day was at least 22 pounds. And the only way I was going to catch 22 was if I caught 24. So it was like it was a bad deal, but it really did like push me to go even harder throughout the event, because this whole time I felt like I was climbing a mountain. I got this 2 pound deficit right out of the gate pretty much on day one. And, I just wasn't gonna allow myself to back down at that point. It was as an easy moment for someone to, kind of not necessarily quit, but to slow down and have it affect them too much. And I really just pushed forward and caught as many bass as I could.
That's wild. I mentioned these 5. I always forget Drew Gill was in there. He just didn't fish the last one of the year. So really there were like 6 of you guys that were all in the top 6 that are all like young dudes who
Yeah.
It's impressive, dude. Very impressive. All right, we're going to take our first break. When we come back, let's get a little bit into some of the patterns, the baits, just some basic stuff that kind of carried you through this historic season in 2024. And then I also want to get your take on joining the Bass Pro Tour in 2025. So we are talking with let's see if I can get all these titles right. The Alec Morrison, the largest margin of victory in Toyota Series history. You hold that, right, with 24 pounds on Sam Rayburn.
Yep.
The 2024 MLF Invitational Angler of the Year, the 2024 MLF Invitational Rookie of the Year, over $130,000 in earnings in 2024, and then the 2023 Toyota Series. Is it the Central or the Southeast Division Angler of the Year, or the Northern? One of those. You won Angler of the Year.
It was the Northern. Yeah,
the Northern Angler of the Year. Did I leave anything else out, Alec?
No, that's pretty much it.
All right, it's BTL. We'll be back right after this.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
Everything you need, one legendary brand. Top on Strike King.
Gear that just plain works. Cast after cast after cast. AFTCO. Any fish, any water.
Gamakatsu, the innovation leader in fish hooks, is launching Nano Alpha technology in 2024. Nano Alpha is a new finish available on Gamakatsu's most popular hook styles. It delivers 2 times slicker performance, 4 times better corrosion resistance. Nano Alpha technology makes the world's greatest fish hooks even better in 2024 to help anglers catch more fish.
Born in Japan, using technology, innovation, and precision, Sunline produces the widest selection of fishing lines at the most technologically advanced line factory in the world. Manufactured at the strictest tolerances to produce victories at the highest levels of tournament bass fishing. From household names like Christie, Swindle, and Cruz, to young guns like Cook, Logan, New, and Welcher, they all trust Sunline to take them to the top of the leaderboard. Choose the line that will give you the strength to guarantee your confidence. Sunline.
Your early morning mentality is your every hour mentality. All gas, no brakes. Focus, purpose, power. Destined for the water, but confident everywhere else. A calming buzz before the storm, the truth of nature itself. You can't catch lightning in a bottle, There's a limit out there, but it's not with your gear. Unrelenting power delivery. Unparalleled weight savings. Keeping you on the water whether you run a 9.9 or out scoping your best 5. In this rare air, there's power in the silence. It's a mindset, thinking only of the things that matter and freeing your mind from the things that you trust.
Get the best patterns backed by tournament data. Start by finding the best 10% of your lake. Know exactly what to look for and what to throw. After that, just put them in the boat. Try the Deep Dive app today.
Look at that beast right there.
Yes. Fishing isn't just a hobby, it's an obsession. Whether it's blazing hot or bitterly cold, bright sunshine, raining, or even snowing. Someplace, somewhere, there's a fish that's ready to bite. And as the angler, you need baits that will catch the fish anywhere, anytime, no matter the conditions. From throwing topwaters to cranking the depths, know the baits to throw. Choose Spro.
Denali Fishing has me covered on the Bassmaster Opens. From their line of high-end rods, from the Android series all the way to the Tack series, the Novus series bait casting reels, all the way to the Covert series of tungsten in the cylindrical and the teardrop shapes. Denali has everything to keep me covered, whether I'm finesse fishing for smallmouth on the Great Lakes or flipping for largemouth in the slop down in Florida. The complete lineup is always on my deck and in my boxes. Denali Fishing.
Welcome back, BTL, with Alec Morrison. When was the last day, Alec, that you just went out? You did not find them. They were not there. You did not get bit. You were frustrated as hell. And you only had like 2 or 3 bites. And you were like, this like sucks. Be honest with me. I want you to think long and hard about the last poor day of bass fishing that you had.
It was probably somewhere in Florida. You know, probably somewhere flipping a jig all day on Kissimmee and only getting 3 bites kind of deal. But you know, a lot of the other places have been a little better than that. That's for sure.
Was there any place this year where you struggled to catch a limit in tournament competition? Like, what would you say the average time of a quality limit in your live well was? 7 a.m., 8 a.m.?
Yeah, I had some really great mornings, but Eufaula was Eufaula, you know, was my worst finish, 22nd. That was one that, for weeks I wanted back. I had an okay practice, but I really found myself, you know, I'd find myself at the end of the day having more questions than answers. And that was one that I spent a ton of time pre-practicing. Not a ton of time, but I spent a solid like 5 days graphing. Brett Carnwright and I we both kind of split up the lake and graphed each for like 5-6 days, and we probably accumulated like well over 1,000 brush piles and hard spots, and thinking that was going to be the deal. Quite literally have like almost all of Eufaula graphed to a T, and I thought, you know, in practice I spent, you know, majority of that time that we spent during those 3 days was really just running stuff that we had found prior. And it just really wasn't the deal. I kept, you know, I'd have moments of glory, I guess, certain days. And then a few hours later, I'd be like, well, maybe this isn't the deal, because I just did that for, you know, I caught him on this thing and I just ran 30 more and didn't see a bass. And that was definitely my toughest event. I figured out the you know, the schooling fish essentially late. I had never really graphed ledges for schools of bass before, um, at least in that manner, and I didn't figure it out until about 2 hours of practice left on the final day, and I found I think 4 schools, and the morning of day one, the first 3 schools I tried to start on had multiple boats on them, and that was a tough one to kind of deal with. I ended up running to the 4th one, and it wasn't even necessarily like a school. It was just like a group of fish that was on this high spot, like out in the middle of the lake. There was like this one little high spot on my Navionics relief shading, and I caught a couple there in practice, and I started day one there after I couldn't get on the big schools on the main river channel ledges, and I caught what I had there, and then the rest of the day I pretty much tried to upgrade on piles and stuff, and it just never happened. And then day two, it was similar. I just quite literally couldn't start on like any of those first 3 schools, and I literally started my morning on day two. The night before, I marked like 12 places on my mapping, and the night after day one, and then day two, I quite literally started the morning just idling for new schools. I didn't hurry up and go fish a spot, and literally the first dot that I had came up to idle this one stretch of this river channel ledge. I basically like sat down and idled maybe like 100 feet and saw a school, and I dropped the trolling motor, and I got 5 bites in a row out of them. 5 bites in a row. I landed three for about 15 pounds, and the other 2 were just as big, and I lost them. And after those first 5 bites, I could not get a single one to commit there the rest of the day. And I almost came in without a limit. I should have had like 20 plus pounds, and I think I had like 17 something, and I had 2 1-pound spots in there.
Holy
And
smoke.
yeah, so that was, Eufaula was by far the toughest for me, but it's kind of interesting, kind of my thought process on it. I knew what I needed to be doing. I wasn't able to put it together in practice, so I spent time during the tournament days continuing to look and practice for that kind of stuff, and I caught enough to get by for sure. And
Remember Tim Horton did that on Kentucky Lake one time on the final day. Like, he had made the cut, he was out of fish, and he idled for 7 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And at like 1:30, he finds a school. He plugs up like 22.5 pounds, and everybody like was like, "Man, look at that. Like, can you believe that guy went 7 hours idling?" And then finally went, there they are.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it was
the
for me.
idling, dude. It shocks me through this interview, like how much idling you do. Like, I've not heard you use the term scoping to find them. Like, you find them in the driver's seat.
Yeah, for the most part, but that's certainly like, it's got to be one of my favorite things ever to do.
With side imaging, or do you have like 9 deucers?
No, it's side imaging. I don't
like
have the
straight old side imaging, like that came out in 2009 that like everybody's been using, that every single boat has.
Yeah, heck yeah. I mean, it's like it's probably the most efficient way for me to kind of get around and to get a good look at things. I'd probably do it a little bit differently than others at times. But I truly like have just as much fun idling all day and finding places, with fish essentially, that I do catching them. I like, I really enjoy like just finding them.
Process. So you're
the whole process
guy.
involved. Yeah.
So,
yeah, no doubt.
So this is not a case where you got tons of info before the cutoff. You bought a bunch of stuff. You knew guys who said fish here. Like, you have a system that you implement on lakes and work with guys in the tournament that you also trust. And that's why, in my opinion, it's so consistent and why you're going to be so dangerous for years to come. All right, I'm going to ask this other thing. You saw every fish you caught this year. Were there any that weren't scope fish?
Yeah, a couple of them on West Point, day one. So I was pretty much fishing isolated piles on West Point. And on day one, it was like a big rainstorm. I mean, it was just dumping rain for the first half of the day. We had wind. And, I couldn't see the fish like in piles. Those piles there were pretty small, but they were like a different kind of pile. They were like really, really thick. Like you could get a bait into, get a neck of rig worm into when you rigged it correctly. But man, it was like hard to get them out. And, but with those conditions on day one, I didn't really see them. I more so had to put my bait in the right place. I was using scope to make an accurate cast, but I really wasn't specifically targeting certain fish. But then as it progressed into days 2 and 3, we had slick, calm conditions and sunny, and all those fish that were on bottom on day 1 kind of started to suspend in the top of the piles. So that's where I would like days 2 and 3. I physically started targeting singular fish in those piles, and but yeah, I would say day 1 of West Point was really the only time that I was, not throwing at a specific fish throughout the whole year.
So it's easy to watch like how you caught them and stuff throughout the year and go, wow, that kid's really good with scope. But 47 minutes into this interview, what I'm realizing is, wow, this kid is really good at breaking down water, putting the time in, and figuring out how to get around the best quality of fish on the lake, and then catching them after that.
Yeah,
is that a fair representation of why you think you have had so much success over the last 2 years?
Yeah, no doubt. And some of that has come from the way I grew up learning how to fish on Champlain, and also a lot of that has come from the time in the winter that I've spent in Florida with Garrett, and also in Texas.
That dude's a rock star too.
Garrett is
intimidating as hell too, because I don't know him that well. Like, I know him to say hi to, just because he knows a lot of the same people I know.
Yeah.
Like, A, I wouldn't want to run into that guy at a bar if he was in a foul mood. And B, like, I feel like he's one of the most underrated guys out there. Like, he can put it on him day in and day out, north to south.
That dude, I can attest. It's like, he's one of the guys who can quite literally pick up any little info and catch them anywhere and do it better than you. Like, you can show him what to do for 20 minutes, and he's going to go out and find all of your stuff, and he's going to catch them better than you. I mean, it doesn't matter where it is. He picks up on everything incredibly quick. Not to mention, he's like, probably in my mind, he's the best angler in Florida. He has an insane ability to fish grass and to find fish in places like, Kissimmee Chain, Harris Chain, Okeechobee. He's an unbelievable angler, and it's awesome that we've been really, really close friends for a long time now, and we both come from completely opposite kind of styles of fishing, but just spending time together, we've both helped each other learn a ton about different stuff around the country. And yeah, that's a dude who a lot of people know, and then a lot of people don't know, so, and probably don't quite understand like how good he is. And when he comes onto the scene, it's gonna be mayhem.
He guides, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does a lot of trips both in Florida and up north.
There he is,
my
right
place
there
as well. At G Rock.
There he is. I need to get him on guide day. Sorry, you were
big
doing
time.
you were on some sort of train of thought that I just knocked you off of there.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think exactly where I was going with it.
I was just talking about like the main pattern that you're doing is not just scoping; it's getting it in the right area.
Yeah, so a lot of that, has come from, not only the Champlain stuff up north and the things I've learned idling and looking for fish on huge bodies of water, but it's also been, the time I've spent down south in Florida and Texas, and I've really like grown a love for figuring out what the biggest bass are doing in the lake, because generally it's something that's a little different than most people are doing, and I really enjoy like targeting that upper class fish, and I truly, Matt, go into every single tournament I've ever been in to win. I've never fished safe. I've never fished safe. I never go for catching a limit. There's a lot of places up north, not so much down south, but up north where, in a Toyota, my co-angler would be like, dude, what are you doing? And I'll literally throw back like three 15 to 18 pound bags on Champlain before I even put a 4 1/4 in the well. I'm just
Dude,
gonna
I
throw.
did that on day 2, and then it
Yeah,
almost hit me.
yeah, it's a little bit of a risk, but at the end of the day, I don't like to call. I don't want to have to,
I felt like
be
such a
balance
boss.
beaming fish. I just want to go after big ones, and I'm gonna spend the whole day just looking to catch 5 of the biggest ones I can. And at times and early on in my career, it's absolutely burned me, no doubt. I've had some great finishes on Champlain and stuff like that, and Oneida and St. Lawrence, but I've also had some incredibly bad finishes doing that, and really kind of risking it all and trying to catch the biggest ones I can. But at the end of the day, that's what I enjoy the most, and that's really just trying to figure out the winning pattern and trying to do it in a way that other people probably aren't looking at.
Rough numbers. I was looking at it. What you're like almost 40 MLF events in, and then I'd say you make the cut in damn near every one of them. So you're probably 100 days on the water in tournament competition, and I could only count like 4 days that you didn't come in with a limit. Out of that entire, like one of them, I don't have the stats pulled up anymore. I think one of them was a St. Lawrence, which you had like 3 for 11 that day. There's like another day that was just like a ridiculously tough tournament. But other than that, like if you look at your fish totals, it's like all increments of 5 for like years on end.
Yeah,
which is
that St.
massively
Lawrence,
impressive.
that
I mean, I'm
St.
not like
Lawrence
drawing.
River.
I'm not asking you to like go through the one time you didn't catch them, but
Yeah.
I am curious what the hell happened there, Alec.
That was my first event on the St. Lawrence, and we launched out of Messina, and I was running 125 miles one way out into the lake. Day one, I quite literally run out there, catch 3 5s in a row, lose 2, realize I have to start running back. But the reason I kind of started running back was because I had this one shallow place that I was like, oh, I'm going to catch 2 4-pounders on it. I'm going to have a bag, and then I'm going to run in. And I go to that shallow place, and I literally lose like 7 big ones in a row on a spy bait. Like they would just bite it and jump and throw it. And it didn't matter if it was 100 feet out or they'd jump 5 times and I'd get them by right next to the net and they'd come off. But a spy bait on the river, a spy bait's one of my all-time favorite baits to throw, and I've done it for years. I was actually doing it before it was even out in the U.S., like 3 years prior to St. Lawrence River event being won on it. Like it was something I was throwing on Champlain that, I mean, I don't know this for sure, but I had to have been probably one of the first 3 anglers in the U.S. to throw it and like use it in tournaments and stuff like that. So it's like something I really love, but on the river, I just lose fish on it. I don't know what it is, the way they eat it. Like, I don't know exactly what it is. Never pinned it down, but yeah, I ended up losing every bite I got on it, and then, running from the lake to Messina, I only have like 4 hours in a day to fish. And, I ended up, coming in with a small limit. Like, I think I had like 17 and a half pounds, and I had 3 over 5 that day. And then day 2 was like insane weather, and I just didn't even make it out onto the lake that day. And I tried to scrap it up, but yeah, the river has probably taken me the most time to learn out of any place. It's quite literally one of the most dynamic fisheries, and even as a co-angler, I didn't really ever have good events there. When I was a co-angler in the Toyota Series events there, which I fished a few, um, all my boaters like always went and did largemouth stuff.
Oh
Like I
no.
always just got that draw,
Yeah.
and which is whatever, I don't mind. I'll go wherever you're taking me. But at the end of the day, like I never, as a co-angler, even learned like what I needed to be doing there. So, starting in 2020, when I got my Phoenix, I started going up there more and fishing events, and it was really like, I had to just learn it for myself and understand the current and the drifting and break down this huge body of water. So, yeah, that one definitely has taken the most time for me to understand. But now it's a place that I've grown to really, really love and appreciate. Um,
It's
but
special.
yeah,
I just spent a week up there just having fun, and it was the first time I'd been up there where I wasn't like practicing for an open or
oh yeah,
fishing an open. And
hmm
Travis Manson has helped me out immensely up there with smallmouth crush and long story short, I was fishing a section of it that I was like, yeah, there's a couple good. I love drift in that river,
hmm
and there's a section there that I thought had 2 good drifts in it, and Travis is like, there's like way more than just those 2, and I'm like, what? So I had like
yeah,
I had a whole day just by myself, and I went out and I found like 10 different lines that I
hmm
would never have found had I not just been exploring, and like was catching a 4-pounder on every single line, caught like a 5.5 on one of them. And I'm like, my God, there's just
it's almost
endless
endless.
ways, yeah,
Yeah,
to fish this river. And like everything I fished was within sight of each other, and it was completely different lines on completely
hmm
different contours and humps. Is unbelievable. And I'm like, dude, I could do this on the next mile, and then the next mile, and then the next mile. And it's freaking nuts up there.
I'm pretty sure you could do that for a lifetime up there and never
Yeah,
find it all. It's
yeah,
just
it's
so
it's
amazing.
wild. uh I really appreciate the time. I know you got to get on the road. I know you've got some other shows lined up as well to record, but top 3 baits in 2024 for you. Top 3 baits, top 3 techniques. I know you've used a plethora of different things, but if you had to kind of narrow it down to a handful, what would you say did the majority of your damage in your Rookie of the Year and Angler of the Year campaign?
Yeah, number one is most certainly, a jig head and minnow style presentation. I mean, it's something that, I kind of got, uh, I definitely learned it earlier than most and was utilizing it up north to do really well in tournaments before it kind of hit this, before it kind of, blew up, I guess. And before it was really known to be as good as it was. And, that would have to be number one. The only event I think I didn't use that technique was on West Point. I did it a little bit, but the water was really dirty, and you typically had to fish like kind of a little bit slower. Um, but yeah, number one was definitely some sort of Demiki or mid strolling, more so mid strolling technique. That's something that I really have just spent a lot of time doing, a lot more time than most. Um, and there's definitely some ways that I do it that other people certainly aren't doing, and that had the biggest effect out of all of it for me. And then second would be a Neko rig for sure. I catch them on that bait quite literally everywhere. I mean, it's just so good, from down south to up north, shallow to deep. And then West Point, I weighed every single bass on a Neko rig, a
Wow.
couple different worms, but it was a really interesting kind of way that I rigged it using a Hayabusa WRM 202, and this is a specialty Neko rig hook. It's not one that typically someone would either use like a non-weedless and open hook. Uh, for like this kind of technique or bait, or like a hook with a mono guard or a wire guard. And then the worm 202, it has that small bait keeper on it, and right there in that picture you can see how you can actually completely, not Texas rig, but kind of in that sense, make the bait completely weedless. And like I touched on earlier, those piles on West Point were they were different. I'm not sure exactly what kind of wood or brush they put down there, but it was really hard to get a bait in and out. And this rigging allowed me to kind of get my bait in and out of those piles a lot easier, and it saved me a lot of time. And that was a huge proponent to why I caught as many fish as I did in that event on the Neko rig. And the last bait I would have to say would be I mean, man, you definitely know this one. It's a smallmouth killer anywhere, basically anywhere. I used to think just up north, and I almost said up north, but in reality, it works on Table Rock, those highland lakes, different reservoirs and stuff, and it's a Beast Coast OW sniper, which is it's their finesse football head. It's got no weed guard. It's super small. Comes in a quarter ounce, 3/8 and a half ounce, and this thing is just a smallmouth catcher. No matter where you go, clean water. Spotted bass love it too. Largemouth. This thing, if you don't have these going up north, then you need to make an order, because it's unbelievable how deadly it is for big fish. And, a couple of the biggest fish I weighed in this St. Clair event came on this bait, including a 6-pounder on day one.
I'll second that. It's an insane little jig.
It is unbelievable. I mean, it's probably the king of the St. Lawrence River. I'm going to have like 4 of them tied on for the Toyota series up there. I'm probably gonna break off about 40 of them. But yeah, it's an unbelievable bait. It's really simple in design, but it truly is, the best one of its kind on the market. There's a lot of other variations and companies, but this one has the best keeper, the best hook, the best colors. There's only about 6 variations if I can see on there color-wise, but if you go on the website, there's all different kinds of models. I throw the MB models the most, and the MB stands for Magic Bug, I believe, but there's 4 colors in the MB model, and the MB model essentially has this really, really thin skirt, and it's almost like a kind of like a little glorified Ned rig in a sense. It's like I don't put really a craw trailer or a swim bait trailer on it all that much. Not that those aren't great options, but I really like to just put like a Ned rig style trailer on it and keep it simple. And that's something that goby fish and crawfish eaters all over the place eat, and those were definitely my top 3 baits for the season.
Yeah, that jig translates really well to the Ozarks.
Yeah.
I would like them to make a weed guard version specifically for the Ozarks to keep it with that MB and the hook, like the exact same thing, except just give us a little bit of weed guard, since we have so much crap in the water as opposed to up there. But yeah, it's wild, like how some of the guys fish out of the St. Lawrence, they get that thing 200 yards behind the boat. Like, I mean, when a fish comes up, that like it's like a tarpon on that. Like you literally, like, you're just like, oh, I wonder what the odds are of getting this one in. I mean, the thing is so far back there.
Yeah.
But I had a dude, I learned about it in the last open there a couple years ago. Had a co put 3 for 16 in the boat.
Mm-hmm.
And after the third one, I was like, all 3 of those come on that jig? And he's like, yup. And I had been drop shotting, and I was like, yeah, give me one.
Yeah.
and then on my last drop, I caught a 6.6.
That's all I used to, pretty much drift was a drop shot. Until I figured that jig deal out. And I mean, I don't even really pick up a drop shot.
Dude, the drop shot, like, it is unbelievable in the last 2 years how the drop shot has become like, it's like the cargo shorts of the fishing world.
Yeah.
That's why I could, like, very functional, but like, dude, they do not eat it like they used to. Like, I was a huge, like, back in the day, I would say back in the day,
same.
6-7 years ago, Morning Dawn, 3/8 ounce drop shot, 10-pound test leader, like that. I could go anywhere. If I put it in front of a fish, it bit it. I just spent a month up north. Like, granted, I still caught some fish on a drop shot, especially at St. Clair, enough to finish 82nd. Woo! But it's not nearly as effective as it was 3 years ago at all. I mean,
it really isn't.
It's wild. How does that happen, Alec? How does that happen?
I don't know, because that was basically like the only thing we used on Champlain. It was like all those years prior to scope, and even the first couple years with scope, that's all I would use. And we would catch like 80 to 100 a day, dropping on them on 2D with a drop shot and never hit bottom. But now on scope, it's like you throw a drop shot to one and they swim up and they see the weight and they're gone. Like, they're just like, nope, we've seen this before. Nice try, buddy, but we're not gonna bite it. And St. Clair, they actually bit it pretty good still. They still enjoy a drop shot there more than most places. Champlain, it's really not the deal anymore. And so that was cool to see. I did catch quite a few fish this year on the invitationals. I guess as a fourth bait would have been a drop shot, but in a little different style than most are doing. Fishing it on, a super lightweight, like an 1/8 ounce or a 3/16 ounce drop shot weight, and throwing a bait that a lot of people kind of make fun of, but it's a dice rubber.
No, you've been drop shotting. You've been ultra finessing the furry dice.
Yeah. But hey, say what you will. I mean, I can get on here and talk about it for about 5 hours on why it's probably the next big thing. But a lot of people bash it, and that's okay. I'll keep using it because I love that little thing. I mean, the dice rubber as
That's it, right? That's the exact bait.
That's it. I'm pretty sure the OSP is the only one that you need to be throwing out of all of them on the market. It's definitely the best. It's a killer anywhere you have clean water, pressured fish. It's accounted for more giant bags on Lake Biwa in Japan than any other bait in the last couple years. I mean, dudes are quite literally catching 40-pound limits on Biwa in tournaments using this bait. It's I caught a lot of fish on Kentucky Lake with it, and granted, those were spawners, but they still, even the spawners, reacted to this bait on my drop shot better than most. And it's something that's really nasty, dude, and not a lot of people are more people are laughing about it than actually using it. But that would have to be kind of the fourth little thing that I used. I utilized it on Table Rock last year a lot for spots and smallmouth and largemouth, and that cleaner water. It's a deadly bait when there's bass there and they won't bite anything.
I think we'll just leave it on that and let people think about that one, and then anything else you want to get in here? Like, I greatly appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I've been wanting to come on here and talk to you for quite some time now, so it was awesome.
All right, man. Congratulations. Enjoy it.
Thank you.
Well earned, and just a little bit of a glimpse behind the scenes of I feel like when you get to when you're looking near the top of the invitationals there, the guys who really have it dialed in make it look so easy, and you make it look really easy. But I kind of over this half hour, hopefully the listeners and even I've gotten a better understanding of how much time, effort, and foundation went into making it look easy over the last year.
Yeah,
That
no
you
doubt.
you kind of jumped on the scene there with that dominating victory over like the who's who of Rayburn. Didn't even have to go out on the final day, and carried it through this year. So congratulations,
doubt.
and thank you
you.
for jumping on. And I'll get you back on anytime you want to come on, dude. You got an open invitation.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it.
All right. See you. Drive safe.
See you. Thank you. Bye.
There you go. Alec Morrison, very talented angler. And like I said, it's very easy. There's people who make a living on YouTube who just point and say, look, live scope, 25 years old. It's the only reason why he's catching them. Obviously he utilizes the technology, but guys, there's a lot more that goes behind it. Every single person at the top level of this thing is utilizing it, and the reason why the same guys are rising to the top and dominating in this has nothing to do with the fact that they're better with it. It's that they are using it in coordination with a variety of other factors. And you look at like what Lawrence and Morrison, Drew Gill, Jacob Wheeler, all the guys on the elite, like there are some guys that have understood it, but the vast majority of them understand the fish and why they're using it. They ain't just going out in the middle of the lake, dropping it and coming in with 30-pound limits. There's a lot of talent and skill in the finding of the fish and the understanding of the fishery. Like he said, I think Alec has a lot of stuff under his hat when it comes to techniques and baits and the ways utilizing it. Drew Gill has talked on numerous podcasts about the percentage of fish that he wants to catch, like the seeing to catch ratio. And what I think is these guys who are able to dedicate a lot of time have put their bait in front of so many thousands of fish that they understand the nuances and how to trigger those bites when the rest of us poor schmucks are just sitting there shaking it, going, please eat it, please eat it, please eat it, please eat it. They know how to make that happen. And that's the difference between a 20th, a 30th, a 40th place finish and 6 top 25 finishes. So that's all we got for today. Back tomorrow with another live show, and we will talk to everybody then. See ya.